So I'm going to try and do a quick review on this bike. I've had it for 11,500 miles, about 10 months I've owned this. So I'll just kind of go around the bike and tell you what I think of it, just the bike, and if I mention an accessory, it's because there is a specific issue with something about the bike. So I'm getting about 54 miles to the gallon on this thing, riding a lot of varied terrain. I have done more miles on unsealed surfaces, gravel, dirt, that sort of thing, than I've done on pavement. You can see here the highest I got was 74 miles per gallon. I averaged 54, and the lowest I got was 41. So that's quite a spread. That's why I've got this chart to tell me how far I can go. I can probably do a video explaining how I got that, but you can check out some of my other videos. I think I have one already that kind of explains it. I really like the engine characteristics. It'll do 60 happily all day long, and at 60 miles an hour, I'm getting about 59 to 62 miles to the gallon if I'm just going down the road. It'll do 75, 80 down the interstate, but you know you're pushing it. At 80 miles an hour, you know you're pushing it a little bit. 70, it'll do that comfortably all day. 75 is when you start to notice some of the vibrations through the foot pegs and the handlebars. The reason I've got different grips is because the factory grips, when it's cold, they're very hard and very slippery. These do not change the vibration I feel through the handlebars at all. They're Renthal dual compound. They're a little bit pliant. They're very grippy. I really like these. I've used these for over a decade. I put them on just about everything. I didn't break my levers. I cut them down to fit them inside of here, make them a little shorter. They're both that way. The seat. I do have a different seat. I put this one back on for the winter because I hate having... Sorry. I was just thinking about how much I hate this seat and lost my train of thought. I have a different seat for this. It's a Russell Day long saddle. It's custom built for me. It's got a backrest. Super comfortable, most comfortable seat I've ever sat on. I got that because this seat is one of the most uncomfortable seats I've sat on other than the one on my dirt bike. It's sloped forward too much. It's too narrow through here. So if you're riding off-road or riding aggressively on the street, it's great to have a narrow seat so you can move around and put body weight where you need it. But sloping forward, it put a lot of pressure on my shoulders, 250, 300 miles in a day, and I was shot. With that Russell Daylong saddle, I can go 600 miles stopping for gas, once or twice for 5 minutes and just get back on the bike and ride, and I feel great. So I hate this seat. While we're on ergonomics, I changed to Motion Factory Racing foot pegs. I've got a bushing in there. You can see it moves a little bit. It makes it much more comfortable to ride just on the street, off-road, everywhere. And the reason I got these is the factory pegs are so narrow and they don't grip very well. I was falling off of the bike, basically. So this will hold you in place really well. Never mind all this. When you change the oil in the center stand, the oil shoots past your drain pan onto the floor. So that's a factory Honda accessory center stand that I put on there just because I like to be able to service things easily like that. I've only hit it once or twice off-road. I hit this part on some rocks. Not a big deal. The skid plate, I'd be on my 5th or 6th oil pan. You can see how low it hangs down there. If I didn't have the skid plate, that would have been destroyed many times over. The engine is a stressed member, so there's no frame underneath the engine, so it's exposed. Oil filter is very exposed. These cruise pegs I put on, but this was necessary for me and the conditions I ride in. If you ride on the street, you do not need this. It is a T-Rex Racing skid plate. I had to cut a notch in it because the front tire contacts it under heavy braking or suspension compression. They have a newer one that goes up higher, and I can only imagine that made the problem worse, which sucks because this and the Rally Raid skid plate are the only ones worth having. They're the only frame-mounted skid plates. All the other ones use these tiny little engine case bolts, or they use some flimsy brackets, and it's bad. They're going to break. The Rally Raid skid plate does use a center stand mount, so if you use a Rally Raid plate, you can't use the center stand. But this T-Rex has taken plenty of big hits. Yeah, talked about the engine. Love the characteristics. It's got plenty of torque. You know, if you're shifting at 3.5 to 4,000 RPM with a big handful of throttle, but it'll get, you know, 74 miles to the gallon. Otherwise, I rev it up to about 6 when I ride it. I get 55 miles to the gallon. Very torquey, very, very peppy. Off-road, first gear is plenty low. I find myself going between second and third gear a lot, riding, you know, technical off-road, up and down hills with ruts, that kind of stuff. I do bottom out the suspension occasionally, but that's my cue to myself to slow down a little bit, because it is light as far as mid-size bikes go, but also it's not a dirt bike. So I don't mind the lack of suspension travel, which when you're talking about this segment, you know, anything under 7 or 8 inches is not a lot of travel. You know, a lot of these bikes will have 10, 12 inches of travel, these adventure bikes. So this is on the lower end of the spectrum there. I don't mind it. I've taken this on single track, just through the field, all kinds of stuff, and it handles it. Yeah, you're going to have to go slow, but it'll do it. You know, it's not a Super Tenere, it's not a Tenere for interstate, you know, aggressive off-roading. It's not a KTM, but it's a plucky little Honda. It'll take you anywhere you want to go. Take you anywhere you want me to. But I did go with a different rear tire size. It's a 150/70/17. It's 2.8% taller than the factory one, so you lose some engine RPMs going down the highway. You know, brings the vibrations down a little bit. I think it's easier to ride off-road because it's not constantly wanting to break the back tire loose that way. I felt the factory windshield was not big enough for me personally. I'm 6'3", so and I like wind protection. You know, I've cleaned this windshield a couple of times, and all those bugs are stuff that didn't hit me. I like having the wind off of me a little bit. But yeah, I'm not going to go over the accessories other than the seat and the skid plate, because they're directly related to weak points I felt the bike had. You know, foot pegs are kind of a weak point because they're straight up dangerous if you stand on the pegs or ride off-road. The stock ones are dangerous, I should say. But otherwise, yeah, great bike, gets good gas mileage, does everything I want it to. And with these kind of bikes, it's choosing where you suffer. You know, with this, yeah, it's not the easiest thing to throw around off-road like my CRF 250L was, but I can still go everywhere I went with that CRF 250L. I've taken this through creeks and up dirt hills and ruts and gravel and everything. You know, I took a Goldwing off-road. You know, it was great getting out to western Nebraska, that 600 miles it took, but once I was there, it sucked because Goldwings don't go off-road. I would have no problem driving this across the country and then going off-roading with it. So the compromise is, yeah, it's not an interstate eating machine like the Goldwing. It's not a, you know, straight up dirt bike like the CRF 250L was. So I suffer a little bit everywhere. Now, if you wanted to go to something like a KLR 650, well, personally, I think that's a bad move. But yeah, you're going to suffer on pavement more with that. If you want to go to a V-Strom 650 or, you know, BMW 750 GS, you're going to suffer on the unsealed surfaces a little more. If you want to go to, you know, 890 KTM, you're going to suffer in the financial department. You know, I've got mixed feelings about KTM, but for what this bike cost, it is super capable. And honestly, I don't know that I would go to an 890 KTM over this. Even if the money didn't matter, I think I'd still pick this over the 890 KTM. You know, I looked at a Tenere 700, and it was okay, but you know, it's very tall. I didn't think it felt that great underneath me. Felt like I was kind of on stilts. It's kind of top heavy, so pick where you suffer. These mid-size adventure bikes, you're going to pick where you suffer. And it is a marketing ploy, just like Harley's lifestyle got everybody into cruisers. You know, the new thing is adventure bikes. And sometimes you're going to pay for the lifestyle, especially if you've got an orange product. or a Ducati Red product. You're going to pay a premium for that, but you don't have to. You know, you want Ducati Red or do you want Honda Red? Which is a bad example because it's green, but you get what I mean, you know. And, you know, this being a lower priced option, it's really not a budget bike, you know, like, you know, some of the Royal Enfield stuff. Something you'll see on like cheap bikes like a Royal Enfield is like the passenger foot peg. It'll be welded to the frame instead of a replaceable part. You know, you won't get all this detailed plastic. You know, some of the welds aren't going to look as nice, that sort of thing. But, you know, one step up from the bottom, you know, second from the cheapest wine at the restaurant is usually the best. Well, here's that version as a bike. Now, you know, if you go from this to a premium adventure product like KTM, Ducati, you're going to get more power, more suspension. Suspension's a big one. You know, electronics and stuff. This has ABS, but you can't turn it off. This has suspension, but you can't adjust it. You know, the rear's got preload adjustment, but you need a tool for it. So that's where your big jumps in money are going in those bikes. It's electronic technology and suspension generally. So I'm very happy with this. My only complaint really is the seat. And yeah, if you've got any questions, leave them down below. I've got videos on pretty much all the accessories I've put on this bike that are currently on it, that are currently on the shelf. Go ahead and search for those or just ask down below if you got anything that you need clarified. So thank you for watching.